Hi, I'm Eugene Obah, the host of Fit to Speak, and I wanted to take some time, an extended period of time, to talk about the two segments actually, that aired on Fox earlier this week on America's Most Wanted Missing Persons, which had the case of missing broadcast industry professional and University of Maryland alum Terrence Woods, who's been missing now for close to 7 years. And two of the things that I really wanted to see from this, I had two questions going into watching the segment. The first one was, is this going to unearth new information? Is this going to have some new insights that perhaps we haven't had before? And the second thing that I wanted to have answered was, is this going to move the needle? Now, in terms of those questions, I think by and large, the answer to that was yes. And I credit Fox, Harris Faulkner, and all of the experts that were on the show in discussing this case and, not giving the case short shrift, because it has been really a long time coming in terms of really getting the kind of national attention that this deserves. Now, one thing I will say is that I did wish that, and this also was similar to the Dateline podcast that was done during the Paris Olympics, I did wish in this instance that there was mention of the independent investigation that's being done by the Crime Redefined team. I think that was another bit of a missed opportunity there to really spread the word about those efforts that have been going on by the team of Mehul Ajaria and Dion Mitchell. I'll explain more about that towards the end of the video and how you can support that. But in spite of that omission, and all, I do think that by and large, the segment that was done on Fox was very, very well done. And the biggest thing that I found in this segment was that two of the 12 people that were part of the crew when Terrence was in the shoot with the Discovery Channel with Raw TV as part of the spinoff of Gold Rush. I thought that having the two of the crew members there on the show, that is a huge deal. That is a huge deal. And the reason for that is that I believe to date, we have not heard from any of the crew in any form or fashion. And so I think by having the two people that were there, Cherie Gosselin and her husband, Mike, I think having them on the show alone, I think was very worthwhile. And I think that is going to, at the very least, lead to perhaps other doors, other people on that crew that hopefully will be able to come forward and give some information. Now, in looking at this stuff here, and in looking at some of the notes that I jotted down while the segment was airing, Terrence met with Cherie and allegedly told Cherie that Terrence is that his mom is having some major surgery and that the dad is going blind. Then on October 5th, the day that Terrence disappears, the filming wraps, and according to her, she sees Terrence set the radio down and that sort of thing, set the radio down, and then all of a sudden, apparently take off down the mountain. And some of these details you probably have already known from reading articles of this case or having watched this show. But definitely, it was interesting to hear what she says. Anyway, are her observations on the day of the shoot, and the husband was kind of sort of bewildered. If you saw in the segment on Fox, the husband was kind of sort of bewildered with what had happened in that instance. And the wife, Cherie, she believes that Terrence is alive. Um, and that's something that I believe and I hope that he is still out there, somewhere. We do hope, and I know that his family hopes that he is alive as well. Again, I think having the two of the crew of the 12, this was a 12-person crew. Um, so having the two of them on was really going to be good, not just for the investigation, but also I think they have to know, or at least to have some degree of knowledge of who the other crew members were. I've worked on various sizes of crews over the years, be it 5 or 6 person crews, or I've worked with 20, 30 person crews in all kinds of stuff. And even though you may not talk to all of them or maybe directly interact with all of them, at least to some degree, you do know who you work with. The hope is that more people will start to come forward. Um, and on the show, they had Doug Giddings, who was the former sheriff at the Idaho County Sheriff's Office. And he said that on the 7th of October, they had trackers. And they, according to him, they were able to find slide marks down the mountain of which Terrence allegedly ran off to. Now, one of the experts that was on America's Most Wanted as a guest, Karen Robinson Chamberlain, who was a survivor of abduction and it was a deputy sheriff, not in Idaho but elsewhere. She noted, though, that there's no major highways, and that's interesting in and of itself because what has been bandied about was that Terrence, he ended up on some sort of, road, maybe not necessarily a highway per se, but ended up on the road at the end of the mountain. And there have been some things that have been bandied about that, oh, his sense went up to, that road, but then and then it grows cold from there. And then the question then becomes, okay, what happens next? Was he picked up somewhere? Um, was there anything else that went on? What happened when he got there? So those are some real questions that still, I think, obviously at this stage of the game, have yet to be answered. Um, Now, Cherie, going back to what she was saying on the show, she said at the time that she thought that what Terrence said to her was that, oh, you know, he must be living a sad life, that he may be miserable or whatever, and that he may have been trying to, that he may have been trying to kill himself. Um, but then Mr. Woods said what Terrence said to Sharia, or at least allegedly said to Cherie about, oh, the mother needing surgery and that the father was going blind, was not true. And that Mr. Woods, he said in many articles, he said on my program, and I'll say it here again, and he also pointed it out on America's Most Wanted, that if it were even remotely true that Terrence was, were to have run off, he wouldn't have been talking normally to somebody, number one, and then do it. the only reason that he would have run away is that he was running from something. Okay, that he was running from something, or that he was afraid of something. All right, and that point kind of sort of reminds me of something that has been talked about in this case, and we've talked about on our program, and that is that the last text message that Terrence sent to his father was that he was coming home relatively early. And when I say relatively early, not so much, time wise or anything like that, but the shoot was to have gone on, I think, for another, I think it was another week, another 2 weeks, whatever. Um, but he said that he's coming home now from the shoot early. And now who knows whether the text really was from him, but thinking about, let's just say for argument's sake, if the text were from him, that sort of thing, that it goes to what Terrence's father has said, that he might have been afraid of something. He must have seen or felt that something was off. And it kind of goes to what has been said about Raw TV. I've read in Deadline, I've read in some of the trade publications that I read on a regular basis, and even reading on Vice about the alleged culture that Raw TV, now Raw TV is the UK-based production company that Terrence freelanced for. Apparently, there's some things about the culture that were not particularly great or particularly savory or whatever. And I do want to read part of what Vice said, an article from one of the former colleagues over at Raw TV. He said, this person says that there is a laddie culture at the company, that there was a toxic undercurrent which made he or she feel very uncomfortable. There were conversations where they would make disparaging comments about people they were looking to hire. It made them feel quite uncomfortable. And then they went on to say that they worked on the Gold Rush series. Remember that this was a spinoff of Gold Rush that Terrence worked on. Gold Rush, Dave Turin's Lost Mine. And the article on Vice goes on to say that while toxic work culture sadly isn't a rarity in the TV industry, Raw TV was one of the most difficult places they had worked. I've worked on similar feeling shoots, but Raw TV was different in the sense that it felt entrenched within the culture. Now, it should also be noted, to be fair, that Raw denies the claims and say that this is not emblematic of the culture of which they foster. Now, on our program, on this show, I've had a lot to say about Raw TV. I do believe, and I just want to just say from the outset that I'm not here to accuse any person or any entity of a crime. There is, obviously there is such a thing as due process and but all of this stuff is my opinion. And based on the things that I have seen, especially talking with Mr. Woods, and really just kind of looking at the kind of sort of the totality of what has been going on in this case, I do believe, and I've said this on the show, Raw TV, I think, have been really less than forthcoming as to what I believe they truly know about the circumstances of Terrence's disappearance, what happened on that set. And the reason I say that is that really, at a minimum, and this is the other thing that's also interesting to me, guys, is that the producer um, was obliquely mentioned on the America's Most Wanted segment. This producer was not named. We know who the producer on the set was. and this has been reported on other publications and all. This guy's name is Simon G. Simon G. He was the producer on set the day that Terrence disappeared. And one of the things, and again, I want to be very clear here that I'm not here to accuse Simon or anybody of a crime or anything like that. But at the very least, at a minimum, right? Simon or anybody at Raw TV in charge of a production and in charge of a set, at a minimum, as an agent of Raw TV, you are responsible for anything, and I mean anything, that happens on the set. It will be no different from if I was out with my crew on a shoot for any of our shows, at all, be it Damn That's Good or Fit to Speak or any of the stuff that we've done here at Common Sense Entertainment. If, God forbid, something were to happen to any of my crew, do you know who they would look to if something negative were to happen on the set? If any of my crew disappeared and that sort of thing, do you know one of the first people that they will talk to? They will be talking to me. They will talk to me, about, oh, what do you know? What happened, on the set? And some basic things is like, where's the call sheet? Where's the call sheet? At all. That should have some information, right? That would have some information, location, who the crew members are, what activities that they're going to be doing, the nearest hospital, accommodations, whatever the case may be. And I'm sure that there's some information on there on that call sheet. Where is it? Where is it? So again, I say this because, again, as a production company, you own everything that happens to your people that you have out on the field. It's as simple as that. And I just really, really believe, as I look through some of this stuff here, that Raw really has got to be that. Yeah, they're based in the UK, but I do think that they have to be looked at the very least, in terms of, okay, what were the plans on the day on set? What were the circumstances really on the day? That's all. And to speak with more of the crew that were involved on the shoot. Again, I think that when you look at this, each day that passes, because memories fade, right? Memories fade. And with each day that passes that we don't get to hear from the other 10 crew members that were there the day that Terrence disappeared, with each day that passes, that becomes less and less of an opportunity to really have some really good insight as to all that happened on the day of that shoot, in Idaho. So I do think that Raw has to be looked at. I think Simon's got to be looked at as well. These are guys that, again, really, really, really need to be looked at. And going back to the whole testimony of it, you had Payne Lindsay, who was one of the experts, true crime podcaster, who came on the show and said that, basically eyewitness statements, testimony, is not always reliable. It's not always reliable. So, in thinking about what Mike and Cherie have said, what they may be saying may be accurate. What they may be saying may not be accurate. But maybe some things may be embellished. Who knows? Who knows? But again, memories do fade. Memories do fade, in this. And speaking of, fading, and especially if we talk about, some of the things that have also kind of sort of faded into the background, there have been some things that have been reported on where it was said that Terrence went into a restaurant, I think maybe with the crew or something like that, that Terrence went to a restaurant and he got, he met a woman at this restaurant and they exchanged numbers. The question is, where is this woman? Where is this woman? Where is the surveillance footage of that encounter? If this is remotely true, you know, we should hear more information about that. Whoever he met on the night should come forward with this information. And it's interesting also as well because one thing that was mentioned is that according to Cherie, that on the night that Terrence disappeared, um, the woman that Terrence allegedly met and one other woman were at the site that Terrence allegedly slid, down that mountain. That both women were allegedly there on the night that Terrence disappeared. Now, again, where are these two women? Which restaurant was it? Also, as well. And as I said earlier, where's the footage? So that's kind of a three-part question here in this. And as Cherie said on America's Most Wanted, how did the woman know that that was the exact site where Terrence allegedly slid down the mountain? How did they know? Again, this is, a bit of a mystery here. And when we think about life, right, and not to put too much of my, personal stuff out there or anything, but life has kind of sort of got a certain order, right? If you meet somebody, then usually there'll be some degree of electronic communication, be it via texts, maybe on social media as well, Instagram, that sort of thing, where it's like, hey, nice to meet you, or hey, I just followed you on Insta, or whatever the case may be. There would be, in other words, some degree of digital footprint in this. And again, this is where the forensics really would come into play here. If it is true, if it's remotely true that they exchanged information, Terrence and this woman exchanged information, there has to be some degree, more likely than not, there has to be some degree of a digital footprint on this. So that is something that really, really, really has to be considered in that. Now, in thinking about where they were at for the shoot over at the Penman Mine. Now, the husband, Mike, he says that terrain, you really have to plan well. You really have to plan, the stuff very, very well. Now Cherie said that, oh, he may have gotten the location ahead of time, that sort of thing, and that, he wanted to perhaps she had also mentioned, I think, in the earlier part of it that, he may have wanted to try and start a new life, maybe fake his death or whatever, and start a new life, that sort of thing. There's some interesting dynamics there because it's like, again, who knows? If there was a call sheet, surely you'll have a sense ahead of time as to, okay, where it is that you're shooting. I know on the call sheets that I've done, for my team at Common Sense, they know address, and all. There's nothing that stops anybody from going on, say, Google Maps or Google Earth and all, and try and get sort of a lay of the land ahead of time. But again, if I think about Penman Mine, now I haven't been there personally, but it doesn't seem to me that that's the kind of site that you would sort of go without some level of a guide or whatever, because there are mine shafts. And there have been theories that, okay, maybe he fell into a mine shaft. But as Cherie said on the show, it was like, oh, if that were the case, then there would be remains. That if that were the case, there would be remains, on there. Again, she thinks that she is alive. That Terrence he is alive. Um, but definitely, again, the mine shaft part of it is very, very interesting in this. And one of the experts, I think it was Derek Levasseur, who's a former undercover detective, he has said that he's worked with FBI and I think DEA and a lot of the major three-letter agencies. He says that the investigation in this really has to be started all over, complete, fresh, kind of sort of do-over, really mark all the mine shafts. And, I think as well as like get a drone down there, get some drones. Now, some of you also may recall that there's been reporting that, Terrence, he grabbed a drone out of the sky. But if that were remotely true, and Mr. Woods made as much of mention of this on my program last year, that if that were really true, then where is the footage? Where's the drone footage? And all. And as far as I'm aware, in the initial stuff that was done by the Idaho County Sheriff's Office, I don't believe that even a drone or even the fragments of a drone were even recovered on the day that he went missing. So again, I think, and one of the experts really hit the nail on the head with a lot of this, that there are just way more questions in this than answers. I think that it was really something that it's a lot of I think Payne Lindsay, the podcaster, he said there's a lot of he said, she said in this whole case. And I'm inclined to agree with that. There's just every question that we have had on this has led to more questions and more questions and more questions. And what we're trying to do here in terms of covering this case, and with the independent investigation that Mayhole and Joria and Dion Mitchell are doing with as part of their podcast, Crime Rate Defined, is to try to get set answers in this. And I do want to take some time, to talk a little bit about the investigation and how you can support that. So, as said, Mayhole and Joria and Dion Mitchell, they are crowdfunding. They've been crowdfunding an independent investigation into Terrence's case. And if you go to GoFundMe.com/investigating-the-disappearance-of-Terrence-Woods, you will see if you read through the entire page, there is an outline that Mayhol and Dion have put out that will detail exactly how the investigation will go. And just a few months ago on their podcast, and I had mentioned this on the program, one of the things is that um, through the investigatory efforts that have been done to date by one of their team, they know the exact coordinates of Terrence's known location. And that is truly significant. That is truly significant because it gives, at the very least, a real jumping off point as to where things can kind of sort of really begin. So that is a really good thing. But I know that there is still much more that Mayhol and Dion need your help for in terms of really getting these interviews, in terms of getting the forensics of Terrence's camera, Terrence's laptop. I mean, I think the forensics is going to be a huge part of this, folks. It is really going to break the case wide open. It really is going to be the case here. If we are able to really get down into the forensics aspect of the electronics, because all kinds of stuff could be on that camera. All kinds of stuff could be on the laptop that Terrence had. Okay, so we really need to get we really need to get those forensics, get those interviews. And I know that Mayhol and Dion, they have some retired FBI officials, retired law enforcement officials that are ready to jump on this case. And of course, they've got to be paid, these officials, at all. But your help can really make the difference in this investigation and ultimately for the Woods family. So I encourage everybody. I know that, of course, times are tough. You know, we're dealing with all kinds of stuff, you know, right now. But even if you don't have the financial means to donate to the investigation, at the very least, sharing this stuff with all of your friends is going to really help us out. It's really going to help the Woods family in terms of really getting that closure that I think is justly needed and deserved. So again, GoFundMe.com/investigating the disappearance of Terrence Woods. I think it is very important that we do everything that we can to support this investigation. I don't attach my name to any nonsense. Mayhol and Dion, you know, those guys are the people that I trust to really carry out this investigation. They have the whole details on the GoFundMe page, and they are going to be very transparent. And as they advise, you know, me on this show, and as we see further developments, and there have been some more developments that have occurred just recently in the investigatory proceedings, and we hope that we will get to talk more about what has been discovered, what kind of stuff has been unearthed in future editions of this program. So definitely, please continue to stay tuned right here on this channel so that you are the first to know about these findings. Very important stuff right here that we really need to have. One of the last things that I will say in closing, they had Gabby Petito's father on the program, but they had you know, the dad on the program. And I thought that that was a very important stuff here, that having Joe Petito on the program was just so good, because everybody knows about the late Gabby Petito, and that was a very sad case in and of itself. And that was for us at Common Sense Entertainment, that and CSE Media, that was really the impetus for us in terms of covering this case. In terms of covering Terrence's case, it was the it was Gabby's case that really drove us to do Terrence's case, and I did a commentary uh, on Terrence's case in the immediate aftermath of Gabby Petito's disappearance. And that segment was very popular for us, especially as indie content creators, that we were like, we should do more with this. And sure enough, we did our special at the 5-year mark of Terrence's disappearance. We had both Mayhul and Dion on, and it has kind of sort of led to even greater coverage of Terrence's case. You can see the playlist that we've had. We created very recently a brand new playlist where everything that we do in covering Terrence's story, and we are going to continue to cover Terrence's story, no matter what, we are going to continue to do this. That will be a one-stop shop for everything pertaining to Terrence. So please definitely check that playlist out. We have a link in the description below. Definitely share it and keep up with all the coverage that we are doing. But going back to Joe Petito, there was one thing that he said that really, for me, hit the nail right on the head. And I quote, that Terrence is a handsome young man that deserves all the attention that Gabby got as well. Folks, when I heard that, I was like, if I could do cartwheels, if I could do backflips, if I could do somersaults, I would have in front of my TV. I mean, seriously. He touched on a point that we have been making for years on this program, that Terrence's case deserves every bit of attention that his late daughter's case had. Okay. And we've talked a lot about on the show about, certainly some of the dynamics of missing persons coverage in the media. And really, ultimately, when he said that Terrence's case deserves the kind of attention that his late daughter's case got, again, to hear that come from him, I am just really, really, really pleased with that. And this is a case that, again, should get even greater attention, from national media. I mean, and especially even our local media as well. I mean, this is a missing Prince George's County resident. This is a missing Prince George's County guy who has been missing now for close to 7 years, missing broadcast professional. This is a guy who is a star. He was truly a star on both sides of the Atlantic. A lot of productions, here in this country, over in the UK as well. And having met him over here at the University of Maryland, having met him here, I'm sitting in wonderful classrooms inside Knight Hall right now. Having met him at the University of Maryland during one of my many visits to the campus, you got a very good sense that this is, Terrence said is, that this guy, he's a go-getter, he's a very motivated guy, destined to do really big things in the journalism industry and in the media profession. So that is why when I look at a fellow alum and all, and that sort of thing, when I look at this and see that, such potential and the impact that he has made, and this is somebody who can continue to be making that impact. This is why this case has been really, really a big deal a big deal for all of us at Common Sense Entertainment. In fact, the vast majority of my team are Maryland alums. So this is the kind of stuff that really hurts us deeply. And that's why I will continue to be committed to covering Terrence's story. This is too important, folks, of a story to not be told. It really isn't. Excuse me. This is too important, this story, not to be, not to be told. So I want you, all of you, if you do nothing else today, or by the time you watch this video, if you do nothing else, please share this with your friends, especially my fellow UMD folks. Please share this among your networks. Share this with your friends. Terrence has got to be found, folks. We have to know. We truly need to know what has happened to this young man. We really do. The industry, I think, is poor because Terrence has not to date been found. And I also want to make another appeal to other independent content creators, to our local media in DC and in Maryland, Northern Virginia, and to other podcasters. We need to, it is incumbent upon you guys as well to really make sure that this story gets out there. And I know that there are some of you that I have worked with for years who are in the positions or at least have access to positions of power to be able to tell Terrence's story. And I really want to encourage all of you guys to use those levers so that this story gets more and more out there with the kind of fervor that the late Gabby Petito, in terms of her case, got. Because again, this is very important. This is really important. So again, I want people to go to gofundme.com/investigating-the-disappearance-of-Terrence-Woods. We have a link in the description below. And let's make sure that we get the answers that the Woods family justly deserves. It is you. We don't need to wait for anybody. The power is in all of us to make a difference in the Woods family in terms of this case. Be the difference maker, folks. Be that difference maker. You'll really be glad you did. Thank you very much. We will not be silenced.